Welcome to Music Crush, a new music podcast hosted by Flute New Music Consortium. I'm Elizabeth Robinson.
And I'm Nicole Reiner. If you like the show, please rate and review it on the platforms wherever you listen to podcasts, particularly on Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find us and grow the show. And of course, you can learn more about Flute New Music Consortium at flutenewmusicconsortium.com. Flutist and composer Christian Glascock just graduated from Grand Valley State University. He earned a degree in flute performance and studied there under renowned professors Christopher Cantner and Dr. Abigail Walsh. In addition to his passion for performing, Christian is also an accomplished composer with a particular interest in incorporating the medium of electronics into his compositions. His compositions are featured in Plugged In, Practice and Performance Method for Flutists, which was released in January 2024 from Conway Publications. His composition mentorship under Dr. Bill Ryan has significantly shaped his experimental and boundary-pushing approach in contemporary composition. We learned about Christian when his piece, But It's Not Her, won FNMC's 2024 composition competition in the flute and piano category. Welcome, Christian.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. You sound very busy. You've been doing a lot of stuff. Can you tell us about Plugged In Practice?
Yeah, so Plugged In is a method book that I was a part of. Let me start from the beginning of Plugged In because it's kind of a weird story. I started writing these pieces that utilize electronic delay. Are you guys familiar with delay?
Yes, but maybe in case somebody who's listening isn't, feel free to give a quick 30-second Reader's Digest.
Right.
version.
So delay is basically you play whatever you play, it will spit it back to you in real time at a certain interval that you set it to. And when I first discovered this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually like really cool. Like, I'm going to be honest, when I was younger, I didn't really listen to a lot of like rock and roll and guitar music, which utilizes delay a lot. So I feel like I kind of like am late to the game a little bit with this. But so when I first discovered it, I was like, this is really cool. And started playing around with it with the flute. And I realized that while it's spitting something back to me that I had just played, I can also play more stuff. So it's kind of like this cyclical loop sort of thing. And that really intrigued me. So I sat there that day and wrote my first delay study that night. And I was like, this is really interesting. And when I wrote that actually was the first year that Dr. Walsh, or I call her Abby now, I guess we're friends. Dr. Walsh and that was her first year teaching flute at Grand Valley, which is where I went for my undergrad. So I showed her the piece, I think maybe the week after I wrote it or something. And I was like, hey, this is like really cool. I don't know if you've seen something like this. And I guess she fell in love really quickly with it. And the whole idea of like playing with this one electronic tool. So she ended up premiering that piece at a composition recital I had. And she came up to me while she was preparing the piece and she was like, this is really interesting. And we started talking about sort of like the pedagogical benefits of working with delay and the fact that when it's spinning something back to you in real time, it's spinning something back to you in the tempo that you're playing it at. So it's kind of forcing you to play in a very strict tempo. And it's kind of this metronome that you're setting up for yourself. So she was like, it was really crazy because in one lesson she was like, so yeah, so like you want to write a book? And I was like, sure. Not really thinking about it at first, but after I got out of the lesson, I like asked I called my best friend, Alexa, and I was like, Dr. Walsh just asked me to like write a book with her. Like, what is this? And she was like, oh my gosh, do it. So we had a couple meetings about it and we started talking more about it. And she had some pedagogical things that she had been putting together for a while that she wanted to like put somewhere. We decided to write this book together. It was a lot of work, like more work than I could ever imagine. But yeah, so the book itself is in 3 separate parts. The first part is called Preparing the Body to Play in Tone and in Tune. And it's kind of like our introduction to flute playing almost. It talks about embouchure and posture and breathing and tone production and that sort of thing. And then the second part of the book is drone studies. And it was really cool too, because for this book, we recorded acoustic drones. So we had actual instrumentalists that we recorded just for drone tracks because we realized that a lot of the drones that her and I had been practicing with for our whole musical career had been like synthesized sounds. And we're
Mm.
like, wow, we really want to like work with these drones, but like with actual people. And it's kind of hard to like ask your buddy, like, hey, can you come play a C for me for 20 minutes? Most people would say no. Yeah, so we recorded acoustic drone tracks. We recorded flute, clarinet, and oboe tracks. Hopefully in the future we'll record more instruments. But that's the drone study section. And it talks about intonation, blending, that sort of thing. So like what the reason that we did clarinet, oboe, and flute was for blending purposes and learning how to blend with that sort of sound. And with them being acoustic tracks, you can learn how to blend with those a lot better than something that's synthesized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the third section was the biggest section that I did. It's called Precision and Artistry, and that's the section with the delay studies. So I composed 10 different delay studies that all have different instances of delay, or I think we use the term instance of delay in the book, but it's all different intervals at which the delay spits back to you. And they all are really, really interesting because I chose to use like a different extended technique in each one. So there's one that has like ghost harmonics. I'm not sure if you guys know about if you've heard about ghost harmonics. There's a lot of like percussive sounds in some of them and that sort of thing. And I wanted to make it like fun to play. You're working hard and you're like learning from this, even though you don't kind of feel like you're learning, but you are learning how to play consistently and learning how to play with yourself and that sort of thing. But I think they are pretty fun as well. Hopefully they're fun. So that's plugged in practice. It was really interesting because working with your like a professor asking you to do something like that was like, first of all, I was like, wow, she like really believes in me like that. That was really like it took me back a second and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I feel honored that she would ask me to do something like this. It's a weird thing because we went from the professor student relationship to now we're like colleagues that have this book together that both of our names are on.
It's funny how rare that is in the arts because it seems to be the baseline in some of the sciences. You know, if you're
Yeah.
not researching with one of your mentors, are you even living? So you finished college with a book under your belt, and not horribly long after, you won the Flute Me Music Consortium composition competition with your piece,
Yes.
But It's Not Her.
Yeah.
And we were hoping you could tell us a little bit about that piece, where it came from, what its inspirations are, things you hope people know as they start to dive into the score, anything you want to share.
Yeah. So my I'll go into a little bit about my composition process before I talk about that piece specifically. A lot of the times when I write pieces, it's really strange because I'll feel really, really motivated and I'll write a piece really quickly. And this piece I wrote overnight. Like I stayed up until like 4 a.m. and I just finished like busted this piece out. I finished it. But I go back and I think about what I was experiencing during those times that I've been able to like really quickly write these pieces. And it's usually around times that are really, really emotional in my life. And I'm like really taken on by these really strong emotions. So, But It's Not Her is about a moment in my life. So my mom passed away a couple years ago, right after the pandemic. And of course, that was a really emotional time in my life, as I'm sure it would be for anybody. Soon after that happened, my dad met this other girl and wanted to bring her into our life. And I don't think my siblings and I we didn't really get through the stages of grief. We weren't far enough in the stages of grief in order to accept somebody like that into our lives just yet. So I remember it was just this dissonance within our family of I'm just like, Dad, I understand, but it's just like we need to have some time, that sort of thing. But I basically wrote this message, and in the message, I wrote something along the lines of, I understand what you're saying, but it's not her, and it will never be her. And her as in my mom that had just passed away. So I remember writing that message, and I just kind of set my phone down and I just sobbed. I was really, really emotional. And when I'm emotional like that, like I said before, it's really easy for me to write music and to get my emotions down into something. I feel like that might be a way that, thinking about it now, might be a way that I like cope with my emotions, is to like get them into something tangible, or get them into something that I can like look back on or listen back to. So, But It's Not Her kind of goes through the emotional turmoil that I was going through at that time. A lot of my music is inspired by improvisation. I do a lot of improv. I practice improv. That's like one of the big things that I do when I compose. And it's really funny looking back on that piece. A lot of the lines are simple, more simple than what I've written before. It's because I was writing it in the middle of the night and I didn't want to play my flute and improv on my flute. So I was improv singing, and my singing dexterity is not as good as like, how fast I can play a scale on the flute, you know what I mean? Listening back to it, I'm like, oh, this sounds like a vocal melody and not like a flute melody. But yeah, that was something funny that I've looked back on that piece recently and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But yeah, so the piece goes, it kind of encapsulates the emotional turmoil that I went through during that time. And there's sections of crying and weeping and utilizing some extended techniques to really kind of sound like the performer is crying and kind of telling that story to the audience. And yeah, I'm really happy with it.
Well, thank you for sharing such a personal story. I'm really sorry
Yeah,
about your mom. It sounds like composition, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like it has kind of a therapeutic role in your life, maybe?
definitely.
How did you first get into composition?
In high school, I started composition by arranging things.
Mm.
So in high school, I was in marching band, and that was a big part of my life back then. So I would get home from like a marching band practice, and was like, oh, this piece would be really cool if we could play it on the field. And I would like do marching band arrangements of some of my favorite songs, that sort of thing. And then I actually remember the first piece I ever wrote that was original music was a flute quartet that I actually found recently on my hard drive and listened back to it, and I was like, this is kind of good. So I think I'm gonna revamp it soon. But anyway, so yeah, it started with arrangement, and then I started writing things that I never thought would be performed. I was just having fun with it. Fast forward to college when the pandemic happened, and I had a lot of time on my hands, and I was sitting in my room alone at my computer. I was like, you know what? I'm bored. Let's do something. So I actually started writing my first album that's titled In the Blink of an Eye. It's on Spotify and Apple Music and all that. I started writing that album with the mindset of like, I want to write music that sounds like what I'm missing out on right now. Like being in the pandemic, what I wish I was doing. It kind of goes through a day in my life from different moments of my life. So it starts with like waking up, and then it goes to like a flash of me in music school and a flash of me from my childhood and that sort of thing. After that, I really kind of got into it and I really enjoyed what I was doing. And I talked to the composition professor that's at GVSU, Bill Ryan, and he was like, "Yeah, you should join the studio. Like that'll be really, really fun, really good for you." And I was like, "I don't know if I can write music that like people can play. Like I'm not used to like hearing my music being played." He was like, "No, no, no, we can do it." And so I was with Bill Ryan and started taking lessons with him. And then I went on this national parks tour with the Grand Valley State University New Music Ensemble, which is basically Dr. Ryan commissions composers to write music about the national parks. And then we travel to those national parks over the summer and we premiere the music, which is really, really a fantastic thing. And I feel like at the time I kind of took advantage of that, and I didn't really think like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But thinking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have done more with it. I should have, whatever. So I went on one of these national park tours, and we actually got to meet some of the composers that we had commissioned. And it was my first time realizing that composers were real people. Like my whole musical journey, I was like, oh yeah, this person wrote this music. I'm sure they're dead now, or whatever. I'm sure I'll never meet them. I'm sure they're celebrities or whatever. But I got to meet these people that had written this music for me that I actually really, really enjoyed. And I was like, this is really interesting. I remember the first person I met was Eve Buglerian. Do you guys know about
Mhm.
Eve Buglerian?
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. She wrote a piece for the ensemble called, I think it was called Not My Home. It was inspired by Mammoth Caves. I got to meet her and just hearing her talk about how we went to dinner with her after the show or whatever, and she was talking about her process of composing that piece and her process of composing all of her pieces. And I was really just like, wow, this is really, really, really cool. And it kind of inspired me to like start thinking like, oh, I could do that, you know? And we got to meet a whole bunch of other composers on that tour. Like I think we met Pascal LeBoeuf. We met Sharon Nova. We met Mark Mellitz. All of these people that ended up being like really big inspirations down the line that kind of like propelled me and motivated me to start doing this. So that was really cool.
Grand Valley State, what a cool program. Is
I
it too
know.
late? Is it too late for me to apply? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It was really great. I actually went on 3 national park tours altogether, and we literally went from the eastern coast of the United States to the western coast, and like I've been everywhere with that ensemble, and I feel so blessed to have done that. Doing that with Bill Ryan too, like he's become one of my like biggest inspirations, and
I was Googling pieces for some unique instrumentations last summer, and I feel like I stumbled across more than one piece by more than one composer that I wanted to play that had been commissioned by that ensemble. So I think
yep.
on Team Nicole, I would like to go back in time and make that a part of my undergraduate journey also.
Yeah, it was a really, really great experience.
Well, as you've alluded to, we're all flutists here. So we've enjoyed some nice shop talk about composition. I feel like we should be talking some flute shop too. What are you working on right now in terms of literature and just generally in your playing?
You know, it's been interesting because I just graduated with a performance degree,
Mhm.
and I'm currently in a gap year waiting to go for a master's in composition. But I definitely don't want to stop performing, and I haven't stopped practicing. I always want the flute to be there with me in my life, along with this composition side of my life. But I currently work 2 jobs, and it's kind of getting a little tedious to practice like I was when I was in college. It kind of makes me cherish my moments with the flute more now because they're not as frequent as what they were when I was in college. I've been doing a lot of improvisation because it helps with my composing and all of that stuff. I started doing this thing where I hone in on one emotion and I kind of improv based on that emotion. And I record all of my improvs too. And it's really interesting to look back and like I've seen my progression of linking my personal emotions to what's coming out of me through my instrument. And it's really interesting to just see that develop over time. But of course, I'm still, doing the T and G every day as much as I can and all of that stuff. I actually went to NFA this year for the first time,
Oh, was
which
this
I'm
your
sure
first one?
it was my first one. Yes. And I was absolutely blown away. Like it was fantastic. I went to as many things as I could. I was exhausted every night. I met some of my biggest inspirations. I met this one performer named Bonnie McElvin. I think
Mhm.
she's based out of New York, but she played some of her original music and she uses a lot of really interesting multiphonics in her pieces. And it was something that just came across so effortlessly when she played it. I remember going back to the hotel after that and I was like, I'm doing that. I need to be as comfortable with multiphonics as she is because that is so cool. So I've been working a lot with multiphonics, extended techniques. I actually had some conversations with Bonnie about just her compositions and my compositions. And we were talking about how integrating extended techniques into your daily practice
Mhm.
can only help because it makes it seem effortless on stage and it makes it seem so good or whatever. And she just sounded, oh my gosh, I was blown away. Some pieces that I'm working on right now. I have a recital coming up, which I didn't think I was gonna do, but I guess I am doing a recital soon. I've gotten into this piece called Pirouette on a Moon Sliver by Amy Beth Kristen. It's really performance arty. It's very much like reciting poetry while I'm playing, that sort of thing. And I've done this before with a Robert Dick piece. I think it's called like everyone at existence.universe.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
an email handle. And that was so much fun. Just like being this kind of entity on stage was really, really intriguing to me. So I've started looking for more pieces like that, and Pirouette on a Moon Sliver is one of those, and I'm really excited. And another one of my like dream pieces to play since I started my undergrad was Chantelinos.
Hmm.
I have been working on it. We'll see if it gets there. It's one of those monsters that I'm like, maybe I'll just work on it for the rest of my life and hopefully perform it at some time. I'm also working on some of my own compositions that are coming out soon. I like to do recordings before I put them public of me playing them. That kind of helps me, get ready to perform them as well. I'm hoping on 2 or 3 new pieces for that recital. Big mix of things that I'm doing with my time now.
We often ask our composer guests about the big challenges and rewards of writing for the flute, but since that's your home turf, that feels like a softball question. So we thought we'd turn it around and ask about other instruments. What other instrument do you really enjoy writing for, or do you think you'd really enjoy writing for? And on the flip side of that, what do you maybe have less experience with and want to sink your teeth into sometime soon?
Well, I feel like a lot of the stuff I've done has been very woodwind based generally. And I think it's because I'm kind of scared of brass instruments. I don't know if I should say that.
Me too.
Yeah, I like the whole partials thing kind of confuses me a little bit. I'd really love to write more music for brass instruments. I have one piece for tuba and electronics, but I'd really love to expand and I don't know, write something for like brass ensemble or something. That would be really cool. And I really want to get into writing more larger scale pieces.
Sure.
Like I have this idea in mind to write a piece for orchestra and backing track, and that's been on my mind for a little while. Maybe I'll do it soon. I don't know. But I don't know, it just seems like woodwinds is kind of like my home territory, and I haven't really strayed too far from that quite yet, just because that's where I feel safe. Hopefully in the future I'll write for more brass instruments. It's not like I like don't want to write for brass, but it's just I'm a little scared and I haven't had the opportunity to yet. Let's say that.
Well, every good project starts with putting an idea out into the universe. So, step
True,
one, check.
true, very true.
So, you just finished school, and I think you've alluded to this, other than your upcoming TBD brass project. What's
Right.
next for you?
Well, going into my undergrad, I told myself if I'm going to go to music school, I'm going to go through all the way and get a doctorate. And I told myself that starting off.
Oh, wow.
Um, like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go full into it. And I feel like I've always been like that's kind of been part of myself is like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it all the way. I'm going to do it well. I'm going to, that sort of thing. So in my mind, I think at some point I will finish a doctorate. I'm in a gap year right now. I did the whole audition thing last year for master's programs. And again, told myself I'm not going to go to a master's program unless it's 100% paid for, which kind of shooting myself in the foot right now because I told myself that. But I think I'm going to try again this year and hopefully something works out. Yeah, hopefully master's, doctorate degree, and I want to teach at a university somewhere. I either want to teach flute or composition or a mixture of both would be
Okay.
great. That would be like the ideal scenario. I actually started my undergrad as a music education major because I thought I wanted to teach high school band. And times change, thoughts change, and I realized that maybe that wasn't the place that I wanted to be. And I actually really, really enjoyed being in college. I don't know what it was. It was like, I think it was just the fact that every day I would go into the music building and be surrounded by musicians that inspire me. And like, it was just such a great atmosphere. I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, I ended up doing 6 years for my undergrad because I switched to performance halfway through, but yeah, I just really, really enjoyed all my time in college. I feel like, I mean, teaching college would probably be sort of the same thing. So
I think it's
we'll
the
see.
closest way to prolong that feeling that I've found.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I'm going for. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll invent a new social media page someday and be a multimillionaire. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It's all about the twists and turns, especially if you're going into academia.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of the beauty in getting older is like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And it's kind of fun to see what happened next. I'm kind of enjoying that.
It's a really good attitude for survival.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you won't go wrong with that attitude. That's
Right.
excellent. Well, we have this favorite question we always love to ask of our guests at the end. Can you name 3 pieces you're listening to right now that we should go listen to as well?
Oh gosh, this is a really hard question for me. I listen to so much music. I have a lot of friends that are not music majors and don't do this in their life. And they're always like, oh, I just listen to like pop music, or like, oh, I just listen to like country music. And I'm like, oh, well, I listen to, classical music, pop music, music from around the world, traditional music from different cultures. Like, it's not just one facet of what I listen to. It's like a whole spectrum of things. Recently, I've been really into Steve Reich. I mean, I've been in love with Steve Reich from the beginning of my music career, but I've discovered that he wrote a mallet quartet, and it's absolutely incredible. I've been just on repeat for I guess over a year at this point. It's been really, really great. I love listening to Steve Reich. Mallet quartet in particular is really great. The second thing I've been listening to, Bill Ryan, my undergrad composition professor, he had this like ensemble called Bill Band. And I think it was like they did like 2 or 3 albums, I think. They have this band, this album called Towards Daybreak. And man, I missed Bill a little bit, and I was like going back listening to his music, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really, really great. And that's also been on repeat. So Towards Daybreak, Bill Band, another really great album. And then Lipstick by Jacob TV. You guys know this piece?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, one of my favorite pieces in the flute repertoire, honestly. But I've been listening to that on repeat. I was gonna actually perform it in a recital maybe 2 years ago, but some other pieces got in the way, and I was like, you know what? We'll save that for a later date. Maybe I should do that on my recital coming up.
The answer is yes.
Yes. But I just love that piece. It's like really, really great. And also, you guys know about Michael Lowenstern? So he has a YouTube channel called, I think it's called like Ear Spasm, and it's all about clarinets.
Huh.
And he's a big bass clarinetist. And he has these albums called the 10 Children albums. And it's just him creating music that's all clarinet music, but it's like really like based on funk and jazz, and it's really, really great. So you should definitely listen to it. There's two volumes, 10 Children's Volume 1 and 10 Children's Volume 2. But it's some really, really great stuff. I've been loving it.
Bass clarinet is so good for funk. What is it?
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's so great. So fantastic. Love the instrument.
I love this list. This is amazing.
Yeah. Thanks.
Christian, you are so great. It was
my
so nice of
gosh.
you to spend some time with us today. I loved this. Thank you
Of
so much.
course. Thank you guys for having me. It's been a blast.
Well, we can't wait to get to know your piece a little bit better. And I personally can't wait to see what else you get into next.
Same.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be something for brass. We'll see. We'll see.
I think we can make
there.
this happen for you, Christian. We're going to put it
Yay.
out there.
Well, thank you guys so much. It's been great. It's been so much fun.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Music Crush. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also support the podcast, read show notes, and learn more about FNMC by visiting www.flutenewmusicconsortium.com.